All right, well, welcome everyone. I think letting everyone get in here. All right. So welcome everybody to today's presentation on common gardening problems. I think we'll just wait just a minute just to make sure anyone else joins us here. Just so everyone knows, please keep yourself on mute. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and we'll have Dr. Masami has been very gracious and is in this have an extended Q&A session for us all. So be sure to put this, like I said, those questions in the chat. This session will be recorded. So if you don't want to appear, you can turn off your camera. And a recording of this will be available after the program. It will be both on the Dallas's YouTube page, as well as I'll go ahead and it'll probably be tomorrow, email everyone a recording of it as well who signed up. All right. Well, let me go ahead and introduce Helen from the City of Dallas Environmental Quality Department. And she's going to introduce our speaker for today and tell you a little bit about what her department does. I am Vanessa with the Dallas Public Library, so thank you so much.
I'm gonna start now. Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Vanessa. I appreciate being here, and I want to thank everybody for spending their time with us today. And I think we're all going to learn a lot. I am going to do a brief presentation about my department once this decides to cooperate with me.
I can't eat now. We're gonna start.
All righty here. So my name is Helen Dulac. I am with Dallas Environmental Quality and Sustainability, and I'm very excited to be partnering with the Dallas Public Library on our Grow With Us series. We have been doing this since June, and we're going to continue through the rest of the year. I just want to give you a brief summary about my department because you probably never heard of it. We were formed in 2004, but back then we were called the Office of Environmental Quality. We worked really hard for 4 years, and we helped Dallas become the first city in the United States to achieve ISO 14001 standard. And what that means is we looked at our operations across 14 different departments in the city to see how we could do those with less of an environmental impact. We looked at from the vehicles we were using to the different chemicals we cleaned with, all the way to the paper we put in our copy machine. And we made a bunch of changes across the board in those departments, and we were able to achieve this standard, and we are audited every year to keep it. Now, what's significant about this is that we were the first city in the United States to achieve this. It wasn't a city in California. It wasn't a city in Colorado. It wasn't Austin. It was Dallas. So Dallas has a history of being green, and we're just going to try to get greener. So let's fast forward 10 years into 2018, where a lot of changes happened in my department. We actually had a restructuring in the city, and my department absorbed some other environmental operations, and we doubled in size. And to reflect that, we changed our name. We are now Dallas Environmental Quality and Sustainability. Also in that year, we created a combined outreach and engagement team, and we talk about environmental topics from A to Z, including urban agriculture, which we are going to talk about today. Now, in 2019, Mayor Johnson created a council subcommittee about the environment and sustainability. They have their meetings every Monday morning, and you can watch those live. And if you do, you'll see a lot of my coworkers. And then in 2020, we had something very historic happen. The city adopted the first ever comprehensive environmental and climate action plan. That was done in May. Now, what's historic about this is also that Dallas is one of the few inland cities, a city not located on the coast, that has a climate plan. We're really seriously committed about trying to do what we can to help fight climate change. And we have a 250-page, 30-year plan on dallasclimateaction.com that you can read. There's even tips about what you can do as an individual to help. As the city moves forward for the next 30 years, you're going to see a lot of the things that we do tie back to that plan. And also today's presentation deals with one of the goals in the CCAP, which is healthy food access for all. So I mentioned our department doubled in size, and you can see that these are the different divisions we have, and the ones in green are the newest ones that joined in 2018. And I want to talk about one of those real quick, and that is stormwater. So stormwater is any sort of rain or water runoff that leaves your property and goes into the street. So this can also be from your lawn sprinklers. Often that water can capture pollution, and it takes it all the way to those big drains at the end of the street, and those are called storm drain inlets. And they're there for one reason: they remove water so the streets don't flood. They do such a good job at that, that any water that goes into the drain and anything that's in that water goes directly into a creek or stream, and that connects to a lake or eventually the Trinity River. So just be mindful about some of the things you do outside, because if you have excess lawn chemicals, you don't pick up your pet waste, there's bacteria in that waste, litter, those things can get carried with the stormwater and end up in our lakes and rivers. So I mentioned this outreach engagement team that I am a proud member of. We want to empower Dallas to save the earth. And we do that by doing virtual presentations like this and in-person presentations when we're allowed. We can talk to your HOA, any sort of club or organization that you belong to. We also have a lot of activities and materials for children, anyway from K to college. We also host some of our own events. In August, we had Cleaner Action Day. On November 7th, mark the date, save the date, is the Waterwise Landscape Tour. And also in October will be the Youth Climate Symposium. Now, if you invite us to speak, what do we talk about? Well, we talk about those A to Z environmental topics, from air quality to zero waste. So I want to invite you to visit our website, greendallas.net, for more information. You can also go to the event request form to invite us to speak to your organization. It is free if you're in the city of Dallas. If you ever have a question for me or any of my coworkers, please email greendallas@dallascityhall.com. And please, follow us on social media so you can learn about sessions like this and all the other cool things that we're doing. We are Green Dallas TX on Facebook, and we are at Green Dallas on Twitter and Instagram. So with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Joe. He is our returning guest. He did such a fantastic job. We just had to have him back again. And he is going to talk to us about common garden problems. So in the fall, we might have a little less problems, but we still have them. And plus, this is going to get you ready for the next growing season. So it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Joe.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here again. Thank you on a Monday, I guess. Must have slept well if I'm rested, and I'm happy to be here. And let me, I don't know if the angle of the camera is correct.
You're looking good, Dr. Joe. Don't forget to share your screen.
Share, thank you.
For your PowerPoint, yeah.
Share my screen, here we go.
And also, like Vanessa mentioned, Dr. Joe will be taking questions, but please put them in the chat.
Okay, all right. The purpose of this presentation is to share with you some slides that I call common problems. And of course, we can't discuss the detail, the life cycle of every insect and this and that, but I highly encourage you to study on your own all you can about any insect or disease I mention in this presentation, because they are common and they will come back year after year. So learn the life cycle, learn how the eggs look like, learn how the adult look like, all of that to help you be a better gardener and fix those common garden problems. So the presentation used to be where I show you the question and then we discuss it, and then this screen at the bottom pops up, which was the answer. We don't have 3 hours to do this and present everything else I wanted to present, so I'm canceling the question and answer, and so you'll see them both at the same time. So the question on top is when you see a leaf like this, what is the sign of what nutritional deficiency? This is typical iron deficiency. So please read about iron. You will get that. In Texas, you will get iron, you will get nitrogen, you will get magnesium. So if you want to start about deficiency, start with these three. Of course, this is a unique one picture of a tomato, an advanced stage of iron deficiency. So early stages of iron deficiency may look very different, and that you will learn that with experience and with practice. So about nutritional deficiency, learn and look at a whole bunch of pictures to see early stage, advanced stage, and all that for iron, for magnesium, and for nitrogen. What can you do in this case for this plant? Nothing. You can spray iron and fix it up and green it up a little bit, but not when it is this bad. So learn the early stages to be successful controlling it. And not wait till it gets real bad. The only thing you can do here is remove that leaf and give it some fertilizer and give it some spray iron, and hopefully the plant will catch up. Will get better. If you have you grow squash, and typically you start seeing the plant looking good in the morning, and then in the afternoon wilted, and then next day in the morning looks fine, and then wilts in the afternoon, then this is a sure sign that you have vine border. And even at that stage, it is too late to do anything. You should have checked the eggs, the leaves, the bottom side of the leaves, at the very first sign that the flower buds are starting to develop, and see if you can find brown eggs. So look up and learn vine border, eggs, adults, and what other people have suggested to do. For a vining type of squash, I suggest that as the vine grows, you bury the stem, especially where the leaf is, at the node where the leaf is. This way, if the original plant where we planted it has a vine border, but the plants along each leaf has made some new roots, and you don't lose the whole plant because it has new roots that have developed that it can feed off on. With a bush type squash, that's not very easy to do, so early detection and cure is important. And what do you do for cure when the worm is already inside the plant? There's nothing that you can spray. If it's really early and the plant is still young, you can open a paper clip and insert that paper clip in that hole and see if you can crush that worm on the inside. That can be successful if you are sure that you killed it, if you crushed it. This is not a serious problem. Commercially it is, because you cannot sell crooked okra, but for a homeowner, you just had an insect feed, insect feed here. Let me see, on the inside of that curve, the tissue is dead, so now the okra pod is not growing evenly, and it grows crooked. Again, will not affect the taste, will not affect anything. It's just cosmetic problem. Cucumber can be poor pollination, especially in a situation like this where you see has a fat end, but the end that's closer to the vine is not very well developed. That is poor pollination. If it is evenly developed, the same thickness along the whole length, then it is also could be insect damage. Again, I mean, when it's unevenly developing because of poor pollination, I suggest remove it, throw it away as early as possible, and spray something to control insects. Okay? Buckeye rot, and this is the symptoms of buckeye rot. Unfortunately, there are two infections here, not one, so it's not a beautiful circle. These are two infections. That's not how it looks. This is a easy fungus to control. It's a soil-borne. When it rains, it splashes on the leaves. The soil splashes on the leaves and the fruits, and it starts the infection. So the best cure is to separate the soil from the plant by mulching. What I do is I remove any leaf, tomato leaf that's touching the soil as the plant matures. And I reach a stage when I start having the first cluster, I remove any leaf from that cluster down. So nothing touches the soil, even if I don't use mulch in a raised bed. I avoid the issue of disease splashing because there's no there's no leaves for that contaminated soil, if it is contaminated, to splash on. I'm not saying that any soil will have that. No, the soil has to be contaminated first. And not all soils are. And if you have a raised bed and you're adding compost all the time, chances that your soil is contaminated is 0 to minimum. I get this question all the time when you have preparing your seed pieces, potato seed pieces. Do you have to worry how you seed them? No, just throw it in that hole. And nature will take care of itself, okay? Don't waste your time. Okay, learn if you grow a lot of beans regularly, then sooner or later a disease called rust can become established, especially if you bring in contaminated seed or whatever. And if it gets established, it can be a serious problem. So learn about rust on beans and what kind of fungicides you can spray. Of course, with diseases, preventative sprays is the solution. You don't wait for the early sign of the disease to develop and then say, oops, time to spray. No, by then it is too late. So you got to spray every week, every 10 days at the latest, whether you think you need it or not, to prevent any disease from getting established. Okay? Peas, beans, I get that question all the time. The plants are 6 foot tall and they don't have any peas, any flowers, or the pods are there, but they're not filling up. More than likely, you'll have over-fertilized with nitrogen. You put new compost, you put manure, or you added little extra teaspoonful of fertilizer for good luck, and you're hurting the beans and the peas plants because they make their own fertilizer. Okay, that family of beans and peas have bacteria attached to their root that catches nitrogen from the air and feeds the plant. So don't fertilize your beans and peas the way you fertilize your squash or your tomato or any other vegetable plant. Beans and peas or the legume family should be fertilized half of what you would fertilize your squash, your cucumber, and things like that. And on Aggie Horticulture, we have extension publications to give you an idea of what amount to start with. This is another typical insect problem you have. It's called leaf miner. You don't see the moth because it flies at night and lays the egg and drills a hole and lays the eggs, and the eggs hatches inside the leaf and then start burrowing inside, and then the tunnel gets bigger and bigger, and then you see a hole at the fat end of the tunnel, and that's where the moth, the mature adult, hatched and flew and will start laying eggs. There's nothing you can spray. Commercial grower have something called imidacloprid, which is a systemic insecticide that moves inside the plants and kills it. Homeowners prefer organic options, which means you have nothing available for you. So I suggest is that you can tolerate the damage because usually it is not that bad. If like even at this stage, which is towards the end of the season, from the size of the plants and the size of the leaf and the color of the leaf, even at this stage, I'll say do nothing, you're towards the end of the season. But if early in the season, let's say June, and every leaf has 2 tunnels, you have a serious problem. And if you don't want to spray imidacloprid, then maybe pull out the plant and get rid of it. And other options maybe you can do, hopefully you're successful, is put a light bulb over a bucket of water that has soap and water and turn it on at night. The moth that fly at night, hopefully they'll be attracted to the light bulb And if they tire and they fall in a bucket of water, they will sink because you have soapy water, not float, and you can control them that way by trapping them in that soapy water bucket. Okay, you grow squash or any of the cucurbit vining type family. If you see a situation like this where the oldest fruit did not develop properly, it's shrunken and shriveled, but younger ones look okay. You don't see any fuzz growing on it, like fuzz like from a fungus. That's definitely happened a situation where when the flower was open and receptive, must have been a cool morning or a rainy day. The bees were not flying and that flower did not get pollinated and the fruit is aborted. Ignore it. That's not a disease. Nothing you can do about that. Okay. This is a worm, any worm that you see on your cucumber or any plant, like you have your tomato hornworm, you have your cabbage looper, you have your cabbage worm, any worm you see crawling, BT is your best control option. It is safe for people. It is safe for any other insect, like a beetle, like your ladybugs, like your grasshoppers. It's not, I mean, you want to kill the grasshoppers, but it's not going to kill them. Because it only has effect on the worm stage or any worm insect. Okay, does marigold help with controlling nematode? It does if that's all you have in the raised bed. If you have one marigold on the corner of the raised bed, it's not going to be a miracle cure and sanitize your raised bed, and the marigold will get so big, it's not worth using it in that raised bed. So there are other options like Syncocin or solarization. And again, go to Agri-Horticulture. I have an extension publication on solarization. And that is what the squash vine border looks like when you cut open the stem. Here is where the entry was from, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and eat more and more. Like at this stage, there's even if you kill it and the worm is that big, the damage is done because all this tissue on the inside that's supposed to carry water and nutrient up and down the stem is damaged, and the plant will wilt and never. So if you see the plant looking healthy in the morning, and then it wilted in the afternoon, and next day it's healthy, wilted, harvest whatever squash you have there and pull the plant and find that worm, crush it, kill it so it don't just pull the plant and throw it. Make sure you kill that worm so it doesn't continue growing and developing and fly and lay more eggs that will cause you more problems in the future. Okay, aphids, this is what aphids look like close up. Of course, they are not that big. And you see here two kinds of aphid, brown aphids and green aphids, and there's all kind of aphids. And you see on the right, you see the ant feeding on the sugar droplets that the aphid make. And that's how we call an ant aphid rancher. They take care of them. They move them from one part of the plant to another if they're not getting enough sugar, just like people herd cattle and take care of cattle. The problem with aphids is that it lays pregnant live females. It does not lay eggs. So this one just laid these babies, and they are ready to crawl around and then stick their mouth in the leaf and start feeding on it. They don't move far, and they don't move. So usually they're on the shoot tips. That's where they start, because that is where the tender tissue is and where the juices are sweetest. So if one control option is to maybe cut that shoot tip Anything you spray will work. They are easy to kill. You just have to spray and then spray again 3 days later and then spray again 3 days later. Because if 10 survive, those 10 will become 200 in 10 days. So one-time application is never enough with aphids. Okay, this is sting bug. We learn everything you can about sting bugs because we have them and you will have them and we will continue to have them. And that is how the damage look like. You'll see yellow spots, and if you eat it, it's grainy. I mean, it's not poisonous, doesn't affect the taste. It's just ugly, and commercially you cannot sell it. Of course, it fed on it when it was still green. So when the tomato is still green, you may not see the damage only when it turns. Again, cut it, cook it, or just throw it in the compost pile. There's no eggs or anything. It's just looks ugly. But this is your problem. And sting bugs are very hard, impossible to control by the homeowner when they reach the adult stage. So your best defense is to get them when they first hatch, or even know what the eggs look like and spray regularly or crush the eggs when you see them. This is another serious problem that we will have. So learn about downy mildew and powdery mildew. And this is what downy mildew look like in a commercial watermelon operation. You'll see every leaf has at least 4 or 5 spots. There's nothing you can spray even commercially that will fix it. Like I said, with diseases, you have to spray preventatively, not wait to see the disease and control it. You know, there are fungicides available, and I'll show you a list later, but catch it early. And catch it when you first see yellow spot, before that yellow spot become brown spot. That is the time to control it. And when you spray, make sure you're spraying under the leaf more than on top of the leaf, because that's where the disease starts. So full coverage, over, under every nook and cranny, is the best approach to control the disease well. This is not a disease. This is just uneven watering. The plant is stressed, dries out, then you water it a lot or it rains a lot. The fruit cannot expand, becomes like a hard box, and then you pump in too much water and the skin busts open. So you mulch, you water more uniformly, meaning if you were watering an hour every 3 days, then maybe half hour every day is better, so that the plant never dries out, the soil never dries out. Okay? And I showed you earlier downy mildew. This is powdery mildew. That's how it looks. It looks like you sprayed talcum powder on your leaves. That is very easy to control, but you don't want to reach this stage where it's solid, the leaves are solid white. The earlier, the better to spray, and it's much easier to control than downy mildew would be. Okay. This is a virus on all kind of squash and zucchinis, transmitted by insects. It does not cause any change to the taste. Actually, it just looks ugly. Who wants to buy a zucchini that looks with yellow spots? It's more cosmetic. You can still eat it. You can still cook with it. It just, you know, I'm not growing ornamental gourd or ornamental winter squash. I'm growing summer squash to eat. So again, and here are examples of the cucumber mosaic virus, the papaya ring spot virus, zucchini yellow mosaic virus. So learn about those. And again, if you see this and you wish to ignore it and cook with it, God bless. There's nothing you can spray for the virus. If you don't want this to happen, you need to spray for the insects, especially aphids that seem to transmit these viruses. Okay? Friend and foe, these three kind of look like each other, but the ones on the left are your cucumber beetle, and they come in two kinds, the spotted and the striped cucumber beetle. Those are serious problem, and you will see them as even at transplanting time when the weather is still very cold, they hibernate and they emerge very early, and they transmit diseases. So they may take a bite of your tomato seedling or your squash seedling, and you don't see any serious damage, but then a month later you have virus problems, and you have to throw away the plant. So my best solution is the minute you transplant, spray an insecticide to control and deter these early bugs from feeding and giving you viruses that you don't want. Of course, the one here on the bottom right is your friend, lady beetle. That can and does love to eat the aphids. So commercially, in organic operation, you can buy beetle. You can buy like 10,000 lady beetles and throw them in the, open the bag, dump them in the garden, and they'll go around eating all the aphids. When they run out of aphids, they'll fly away. But hey, so what? They are not invasive. They don't cause any trouble. At least you got rid of your aphids. This is, I want you to learn everything you can about the squash bug, just like the sting bugs. This is a serious problem we have in Texas, and you will have it. And in this picture, you'll see different stages of development from the youngest to the oldest, the one in the middle. And they always seem to move like in a platoon. They're not solitary. They're always, you see 10 moving around or 20 moving around like each other. Or on the tomato fruit, you see 10 of them on the same fruit. When they are this stage and like in the adult, good luck. There's nothing you can spray that will control them. But here on the upper left, when it is this stage and the skin is soft, very highly likely to spray things like malathion or 7 or neem oil or horticultural oil. And if you spray it well, because at that stage it does not fly and cannot escape very fast. So if you can spray it well and cover it well, the chances of get rid of it's much higher. At this stage, good luck. If you have a solution, let me know. All right, so here's a few pictures. Again, learn everything you can about those few insects and diseases I mentioned, and you will become an expert in your vegetable garden. Of course, occasionally you'll have a unique insect pest that comes and goes, but these are common ones. The next of the presentation is on home remedies. Things that I read or I get asked, and I tested a few of them to tell you if they are myths or are they truth. You have the fruit fly at home. I read once that, hey, here's a recipe where you make a bait. Remember the bucket with the soapy water under a light bulb in your garden, and same idea, but here not only you're adding some soap, but you're adding sugar, yeast in the water. So it's fermenting and it smells great. It's very attractive to them. And when they land in that water, they drown because there's soap in that water. I don't even have to test it. I know it will work because it's all logical and it's feasible. And we know the yeast and sugar and the water will attract the fruit flies. And I know that the water and soap will drown the bugs. So it does, that does work. You don't even have to try it. I don't have to try to tell you that it's a myth. I want to share with you what a master gardener in, what's the name of that town? Odessa, I think it's in Odessa. I visited the great master gardener, and he told me this is how he makes his compost tea. And a compost tea is great fertilizer. Just be careful if you're using animal manure. He's not using animal manure. He just puts compost and runs water through it, rainwater that he collects. And brown water comes out, which is the compost tea, and he uses it in the fertilizer. That is fine, that is safe. But if you're using manure, animal manure, and run water through it, then there's a risk of E. coli. So it works and it's nutritious to the plants, but maybe you should boil it before you use it so you don't spread E. coli on those vegetable plants. but you build the frame at the bottom that's sitting on a cinder blocks, elevated so that you can put a bucket to catch that water, put plastic and then put a frame like you see here. And here he put PVC pipes that have drilled holes in them, which so that the water can get into the pipe and drain out to the corner, which is here on the bottom right, where there is a bucket to catch the water that's coming. And of course, he put cardboard on the inside so that when you fill it, the compost does not falls through the cage holes. So basically to trap it. And what you see here is the final product. You don't see the compost that's inside, but you see the bucket and you see the trace, the stain, the trace of that water or compost tea, actually, that draining out the water and he's trapping it in the bucket and use it in the garden. So I took a sample of that water. And what you see here on the left is the analysis of the water that he had. And on the right, the analysis of the compost water, compost tea that he had. Okay, pH is fine, a little bit higher, but that's fine, that's not an issue. But look at the nitrate. We always have a little bit of nitrate in the water, 13 parts per million. In the compost tea that he got for free, 2,000 parts per million. That is too high I told him this is too concentrated to use as is, diluted 4 times or even 5 times before you use it in the garden because it's too concentrated. NPK, so N is 2,000, P is 29, and K is 1,200. Really very nutritious. And hey, you do that once in a while, you have to remove the old spent compost that, or you add water and nothing comes out, no more compost tea comes out. Of course, you could throw it in raised bed and recycle it. It's not trash. And refill it with new material and probably put new cardboard boxes because that eventually will get wet and start falling apart. Very simple way to get compost tea, but please remember no animal manure unless you're willing to boil it or to treat it, so no more E. coli issue. Okay, I read this online and it's talking about problems growing tomatoes, feed them aspirin to fight disease and boost yield. I don't even have to test it. To me, it's a myth. Salicylic acid, which is the active ingredient of aspirin in its pure form, has evidence of fighting diseases, will kill diseases, and will improve yield. But how much aspirin you have to use and crush and use and put it on the soil or spray on the plant, and half of it will break down and the plants will absorb 10% of what you sprayed. So the theory is there, but don't go rush and buy aspirin and crushing it and dissolve it in water and vinegar and spraying it on the garden. You need huge amounts. So I'll have to test it to see it if it works and do a scientific experiment to believe it. But anyway, here is the link, or you can search Ben Spencer article on aspirin in tomato. Ben Spencer, aspirin, tomato. These 4 keywords, and read that article, and please try it and yourself and prove me or him otherwise. And Karen Gardner, so I don't know if that's an acronym or nom de plume, but even Karen says, I've also read that aspirin can help to boost tomato immunity to blight. I've been trying it for the last couple of years and it seems to help. Yeah, I have to try it myself to believe it. We do know that the blight, 1 year, it's serious. No matter what you spray, you can't control it. It's just the humidity and the temperature and the night temperature and humidity, and it's raining all the time. And other years, It's not raining a lot, and it's drier climate, more sunny days. One spray for blight, and you take care of the disease. Did that happen in those last couple of years? I don't know. So anyway, but my point is, when you read something, think of the big picture. Don't just believe everything you read online. Okay. This a recipe, a friend of mine told me that's what they do. A handful of lime, 5 handful of triple 13 fertilizer, 2 handful of worm casting, 2 handful of chicken manure. You add mycorrhiza. Of course, this will work. Actually, this is too much of a good thing, because any one of these items, just the triple 13 alone, which is a chemical fertilizer you buy, is enough. Worm castings by itself is enough. It's a slow release fertilizer. Chicken manure is enough by itself. It's a slow release fertilizer. So you add all of these together. Of course, I don't even have to test it to know it is a great fertilizer combination. What I need to let you know is that you're putting 5, 7, 8, 9 handfuls here. That is not for one plant. That is not even for, that is enough for more than one raised bed. So be careful how much you apply when you prepare that mixture. This recipe here is for a stock mixture. They're all dry products that you can spread and use throughout the season. Okay, don't overdo it with fertilizer. This fertilizer, I don't know who told me or I read it, 2 tablespoons per gallon molasses and 2 tablespoons liquid seaweed. I don't have to test it to tell you it will work, but is it a complete fertilizer? Absolutely not. Molasses is sugar. This is a great boost for the bacteria in the soil to start breaking up your compost and your organic matter. But it's not a long-term NPK solution. The seaweed has more vitamins and micronutrient and things like that, but that by itself is a season-long fertilizer option? Absolutely not. Maybe at the beginning of the season or once in a while, maybe once or twice during the season to give a boost to the plant, but not when you study the constituent of seaweed and molasses and you say, hey, where's the NPK? You realize that's not a fertilizer. It is really more a fertilizer additive. Okay. Basil is a good indicator of iron and magnesium deficiency. I've tested it. I know it works. If you have an issue, it will show in the basil before it shows in the tomato. So always plant a basil in your garden and use that as an indicator to say, oops, time to spray iron chelate or add more magnesium like Epsom salt in the future, a little bit of Epsom salt at planting time. Rat control. I saw this option online and they're listing here 6 options for rat control. Peppermint oil, catnip. I don't know how politely to say it. I'll give you an example. If you want to go to a stall, you have cattle in a cage in the field inside, and you want to open the gate, and there's one beautiful, huge cow patty right at the entrance of that enclosure. Is that smell gonna deter you from entering? No, you'll step over it and you enter. Rats and mice are that smart also. You can spray peppermint oil on the perimeter. The smell may, I don't know, it will bother them or not. Let's say it does bother them, but they can just jump over it and then go inside and do whatever damage they want to do. So I will have to see them smelling it and dropping dead with my own eyes and touch the mouse to see that it died to believe that it's an excellent option for rat control, catnip or peppermint oil. Keep your garden clean, absolutely. Remove food and water sources, absolutely. Soil netting, sealing gaps, absolutely. They're logical and practical. Organic fungicides, there are again some things I read online. Apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons per gallon. Yeah, sure, but make sure you don't burn the plant. It can work. I wouldn't use it as my first option, but hey, if you want to use that regularly, like every other day, fine. Vinegar will not have long residual action. Will it work when this early stage of the disease? Yeah, it may work, it can work, it will work. But one spray and you're set for life, no. You may have to spray regularly. And in case the environmental conditions are very feasible for that disease and it will continue to develop, then the apple cider vinegar is not your best option. Baking soda is the same idea as with the vinegar, but instead of reducing the pH of the skin, the surface of the leaf, you're raising the pH of the surface of the leaf to deter diseases from developing. Again, everything I said about the apple cider vinegar applies for the baking soda. Whole ground cornmeal, absolutely not. For me, it's more like fertilizer than a fungicide. Soap, the last one, vegetable oil and liquid soap. This is what we call insecticidal soap, and you buy it already mixed and it works. You want to do your own recipe, fine. This seems to be too concentrated, but whatever recipe you read online and you want to test, please try it on one plant. In case it is concentrated and it burns only one plant, it does not burn the whole field. Tomato hornworm concoction, let's see what's in it. Garlic clove, cayenne pepper, onion, Tabasco sauce. So if there was no dish soap, I looked at the recipe and I said, what am I gonna saute it and cook it? It made me hungry. Onion, pepper, olive, garlic, and Tabasco sauce. Is that gonna deter it? I don't know. Mix well, I don't know. So anybody is willing to try it and tell me and convince me with picture, with evidence in a controlled experiment that it works, I'll say, God bless, try it. To me, it is too far. I will say you have tomato hornworm. BT is cheap and safe for you and for the environment, and will definitely 100% control it. And look at all these options. I find rubbing alcohol and water for whitefly control. Good luck. I tried it, doesn't work. Water will evaporate real quick. If you take whitefly and put them in that water, yeah, they'll drown and they will die. But I don't know. I just not that well thought of. Cooking oil and soap, again, like the previous slide, insecticidal soap will work. Orange oil and water, insecticidal soap. Yes, that can work. Habanero and garlic chopped in a blender. I tried the habanero, I'll show you. Lemon juice for corn earworm control. Yeah, maybe good luck trying to get it inside the corn ear when it's inside and killing it. If you want to spend the time to open the corn ear to spray the worm, might as well open it and remove the worm. Will definitely be more reliable. So here is my recipe for the insecticidal soap. 1 teaspoon of vegetable oil, in this case olive oil. Don't buy the expensive olive oil, the cheapest kind, and 2 teaspoons of soap in 1.5 gallons of water. I've seen other recipe, 1 tablespoon in a gallon. So it's like 4 or 5 times more concentrated than what I'm using, and mine seems to work. You're willing to try what you see on YouTube videos, fine, but please try it on one plant in case it is concentrated and doesn't kill all your plant. I'm not going to show you this, but here's a picture I took on my hydroponic system before spraying and after spraying. These guys were not moving anymore. So for these easy to control insect, the small tiny insect that don't have thick skin like the sting bugs, insecticidal soap works fine. So here you'll see it when I'm touching the plant. I don't know, you have to watch it many times to see him flying around. And then here, they're all dead. I touching the leaves everywhere and every place, and nothing flew out, so they were dead. And here's a video on how to spray. I mentioned you want to spray to every nook and cranny, top of the leaf, bottom of the leaf, till the drip stage, till the excess drips off. I have an extra watermelon plant in the greenhouse right now, just for fun growing. And I just to show you how I'm spraying, because I had aphids on this plant. And backpack sprayer, the good pressure, you see already the excess dripping off everywhere. And then I switch turn the nozzle upside down, so I'm spraying up, and I went and did that again to spray the bottom side of all the leaves. Okay, and here's neem oil on ants. Yes, sorry, that's my voice. This is in my aquaponic system. After I sprayed them, and it drowns them. I mean, but look how much I sprayed. I sprayed a lot. And here's on the right is the video next day after the oil dried out, and none of those ants were moving. So will it work? Absolutely, it'll work. You just have to have good control, spray enough, because basically you're spraying oil and you're drowning them in oil that they cannot breathe anymore and they die from suffocation. I know it's inhumane, but hey, sorry, that's not the topic of this presentation. All right, I tried the hot pepper insecticide spray that I saw one time, and it said to take habanero, which is, you know, a million Scoville units, super spicy, super hot, and a jalapeno and a chili pepper, blended them, added water, blended them, filtered them. We had some pomegranates growing in the greenhouse that had aphids, and I'm not going to show you the whole story. They did not die. I was controlled by the habanero mixture. I did not want to come close to the pomegranate plants. I am not sure if aphids have the sense of smell that we have. I suggest you spray oil to control them, or insecticidal soap, instead of working hard to make this blended mixture. Okay, lots of videos. We don't have time. You know, and by the way, I realized later that these that I sprayed were already dead. Because they were not moving on the plants that I did not spray. You want to spray for aphids, start at the shoot tips. That's where the latest infestation is, and that's where they want to go. Rubbing alcohol, I also tried rubbing alcohol 1-to-1 ratio with water. And again, I sprayed with the aphids, and nothing to write home about. Get insecticidal soap is better. But eggshell is a small experiment I did to reduce the effect of the blossom end rot. If you grow tomatoes, you should know what blossom end rot is. And if you have that, it's a calcium deficiency that's exacerbated by irregular watering. You may have all the calcium in the soil, but if you don't water enough, that calcium is not going to move with the plant, with the water into the plant, and you have problems. So look up what blossom end rot looks like. And what I did is I took vinegar with a pH of 2, and I took some eggshells, dried them, crushed them. I really should have ground them to a powder form. The finer that eggshell you grind it, the more calcium you can extract from the shell, because the eggshell is calcium carbonate. You add vinegar to it, you release the carbonate as CO2, so you don't see the video here, but this is foaming. You see the foam developing, and then you stir it and you stir it. And so the calcium carbonate with the vinegar, with the acid, changes to calcium in the water, and the CO2 that is released to the air, okay? So that water, I measured the pH of that water, and then after a while, I'm showing you the picture here, the pH increasing from 2 to 4 to 5, and finally, a day later, the pH was 5.8. So that is very good not you add it to the soil, not gonna hurt anything. But look at the calcium in the vinegar, 1 part per million, 5,300 parts per million in the vinegar with the eggshell. It's not vinegar anymore because it's not acidic at all. And there's also, I had no idea that there's also potassium. Look, 180 parts per million. There's nitrate, but that's not different from the vinegar. There's also sodium. That's too much to add every day. You can kill your plants from salt, but once at transplanting time, you do that, the equivalent of 1 eggshell per plant, and you'll be fine. You cannot overdose the plant with too many eggshells or with too much. So I don't have a recipe to tell you put 5 ounces of vinegar and 5 eggshells. Just add until the foaming stops, and you'll be fine. Whatever you release from the eggshell in terms of calcium will be more than sufficient. So the bottom line is, don't believe everything you hear or read. Some things are probable. They can happen under certain conditions or possible. Some are myth. Don't believe it. My best example is, I can tell you, see a guy making their own recipe and they say, I'm going to kill this weed. And they spray the weed, and then the video breaks into a week later and the plant is dead. To me, that is a myth, because you did not show me what happened between these 2 seconds. He could have turned off the camera and burned it with a blowtorch or sprayed it with Roundup, and then a week later took a picture of that same plant. So maybe not. That's not, unless it's the whole story documented, proven that anybody can repeat it, and what we call the scientific method. Otherwise, don't believe everything you hear or say. So don't worry, but I'm not going to stop at the next few slides. I will send a copy, so you will get a copy of this presentation. But the next few slides are lists of organic fungicides. So this slide here shows you the name on the left, the disease it can control, and what it is labeled for. And GH mean greenhouse. So things like Serenade is great on powdery mildew, early blight, fire blight, bacterial diseases on any vegetable, also inside the control environment like in a greenhouse. Get some Serenade, because we will have powdery mildew, we will have early blight on tomatoes. These are very common. Actinovate is great for soil-borne diseases. For powdery mildew, I told you powdery mildew is a problem. Gray mold, that's a problem on strawberries and things like that. Alternaria, strawberry, tomatoes. So it's, again, see any vegetable. That's what you want. You see something that was broad spectrum. You can be used on any vegetable. So these 2 slides are a great option. Please don't rely on only one fungicide. Don't only spray, maybe spray twice and then switch to something else. Bordeaux mixture, here's the recipe how to make Bordeaux mixture. Funny story behind it is a guy in France, in Bordeaux, France, got tired of kids eating his grapes. So he said, let me spray something that has copper sulfate, which smells like rotten eggs, so they won't come in and steal my grape. And it worked. Smelled like rotten eggs. Kids did not eat this, but then he realized that the plants that he sprayed did not have any fungi or bacterial blight on them, and that's how Bordeaux mixture. And here's the recipe on how to make your own. If you make it, make 1 gallon and then spray it all, or make enough that can be used today. Don't make a 50-gallon recipe to use for the whole season. Don't do that. And the next few slides are same thing, but for insecticides, but this is 1 slide per insecticide. So spinosad tells you what it controls, great for thrips, leaf miners, caterpillar pest, and some detail, more detail. I'm not gonna stop and read every one. BT, I mentioned BT, great for worms. Neem oil is great, control aphids, any soft-bodied insect like aphids, whiteflies, and mites. The problem with neem oil is that if the temperature is gonna be above 80, so like mid to late spring or throughout the summer, you spray it, you can burn your plants. So switch to horticultural oil or anything called all-season oil. All season, like you can use it the whole season. Azadirachtin is the pure form of neem oil, and here's more information, and Neemix, commercial formulation that you can buy if you like. Bovaria bassiana is like BT, but this is BB, I suppose, this is great on whiteflies, thrips, aphids. That's not something that's available at Lowe's and Home Depot. You have to go online and buy it. But if you have a serious problem of whiteflies, beetles, certain beetles, thrips, aphid, caterpillars. If you have a serious operation, large garden or a greenhouse or whatever, and you don't want to take any risks, then this will be better than, for example, neem oil to control your whiteflies. There are some viruses that you can spray to control insects. Again, those are not available at any garden center. You have to go to specific stores, and the list is here. And there are nematodes that you can spray to control insects, like your cutworm, squash vine borer, mole cricket, white grubs. So again, those are not available at any garden center, but the names are here to go where you can find them and buy them. Okay, pyrethrin is a great option to have. I have pyrethrin, and I take a pinch and put it on a fire ant mound, and kills most of them, and the rest they leave, and you'll never control them 100%. They'll pop up somewhere else. But at least you kill that mound now. So pyrethrin is safe that way. And here's some more information on pyrethrin, rotenone, forget that. Plant extract product, I told you that I tested some that are homemade. Commercial formulation that they are extracted and done professionally, and they're purer and they're stronger, they can have have potential. As a repellent property, not as a killing property. Iron phosphate is great if you have slugs or snails. And horticultural oil is what I told you, great, like neem oil that you can use year round, great for aphids, pyramites, whiteflies, any of the small insects that have soft bodies, not like sting bugs or squash bugs. And and here's insecticidal soap and sulfur, powdered sulfur. You should buy powdered sulfur and use it once in a while, once a year, if your soil pH is high. And you can use that same product as a duster to dust it to kill spider mites and certain plant diseases. That is accepted as an organic option in commercial organic operation. And you have the white powder, not the yellow powder, the white powder that is made from chalk, finely ground chalk, the commercial grade, not the school grade chalk that you grind it. It does work to control some diseases. With that, I end my presentation on time, I hope, and I'm happy to stop sharing stop sharing, and so you can see each other and answer some questions.
All right, Dr. Joe, thank you. That was a wealth of information. I feel like I'm prepared for my spring garden. So we do have a few questions.
Great.
Okay, so I'm not sure, this is a bug you didn't talk about, and I'm not sure if this is more of a veggie bug or like a bug that affects ornamental plants, but do you know anything about the box elder bud and how to treat it?
That's not a vegetable bug, sorry.
All right.
What I suggest is see what family it is or what it is related to. And if something, let's say it's related to stink bugs, then the chances of whatever worked for sting bugs is higher, much more likely that it can work for it versus something that works on aphids. So find something of the same family and start with that option first.
Oh, no,
Yeah, that's a
brilliant.
question for an ornamental specialist, sorry.
And so also when he was talking about bugs and getting to know them, and since we also have the Dallas Public Library as our partner in this, this is a great book. And it's easy to find. And of course, I'm sure you can get copies at the library. And this is actually written by some people from North Texas. This is the Texas Bug Book by Howard Garrett and Malcolm Beck. And it does have really good pictures and descriptions of bugs. So like Dr. Joe was talking about bugs are hard because at different stages in their life, they look different. So like when they first, like the egg looks one way, when they first hatch looks some way, they might, change and they become adult looks completely different. So it's kind of hard to keep up with the bugs, but having a reference like this is great. I'm glad you touched on whiteflies. We had a lot of comments about whiteflies, and I've seen a lot of comments from other people about how they're just terrible this year. So it sounds like neem oil might be one of the most common ways.
Neem oil, serenade, neem oil, horticultural oil later in this if you miss them. But the best advice is any seedling, any plant you buy from the nursery, from the store, assume that it has insect and an egg. So the minute you plant it, spray it to sanitize it. Because I remember the very first time I started a garden in College Station, I started having whiteflies. It's a virgin garden the very first time. It's not possible. I mean, it's impossible. The best garden is in a new location that never had vegetables. You should have the first year insect and disease free. So I bought another plant and I put it in a plastic bag in the office, inside a plastic bag to trap it. And a week later, I saw white flies flying inside. So I brought in the white flies with the tomato transplant that I bought from the store. So since then, I tell everybody, spray it and then plant it, or plant it and then spray it. Because the insect eggs you cannot see, and the disease spore, you cannot see. So kill them, clean them, and then you'll be fine.
You know what? That's really great advice too. All right. So we also had a question about the concentration of neem oil for ant control. So in case you're not familiar with it, this is an example, one of many types of neem oil that are available. There's many manufacturers of it. And so what I did is, without my reading glasses, I had to look at this and see what they mentioned. So they do have instructions that come with them. And this one says, mix neem oil at the rate of 2 tablespoons per gallon of water, or half of a tablespoon per quart of water. So Dr. Joe, do you think that ratio is good for ants?
Yes. I never add any extra. I always read the label. Even for organic options, I don't assume it is safe for you. I read the label. If it tells you wear gloves, please wear gloves. If it tells you wear eyeglasses, please wear eyeglasses. And also to know about the rate. And please don't be generous. If it tells you half a tablespoon, don't say, I'll put it 1 because more is better. You're wasting your money and you may burn or hurt something. So half a tablespoon. I know I followed the recipe when I sprayed my ants. I did not put any extra. What you can is spray and then maybe an hour later come back and spray again from the same mixture. Don't double the dose and spray once. Even better, spray and then 2 days later spray again. This way you get what escaped the first time.
That's a good point, because these insects are mobile and you're not going to get 100% coverage. And also to talk about how he talked about spraying the top and the bottom of the leaves is really important too, because those little guys will just run, because once they feel those droplets, they just run to the bottom of the leaf, right? That happens all the time. And neem oil is great because it can be used for so many different kinds of pest control. So we also had, you mentioned a little bit about orange oil. So this is an example of an orange oil. It's not like an essential oil that you might use in a diffuser. It's a different type of product. It's been like pressed out of the orange peels, and it's highly concentrated. So, Dr. Joe talked about, he tried some of his, some home remedies. Well, I've tried a couple in my somewhat successful gardening career. And this one I saw from a different A&M extension, a recipe for using orange oil plus dish soap plus water for fire ants as a mound drench. And I have used it multiple times and I have found success with it. Now, orange oil, since it is concentrated and stuff, it can burn tender plants. So if this is really good if you have like a mound in the middle of your yard, you know, where it's not around tender plants or anything like that. It can also burn earthworms, but I have a suspicion that there's not going to be a lot of earthworms near a fire ant mound because I don't think they get along very well.
No, that's
so
true.
I think if you pour it on the mound as a drench, like I said, I've had really good success with it. Now, but it's not for every situation.
No,
and I think that's
right.
what Dr. Joe has showed in his presentation, is that there are so many options and you choose the best one for your situation and what's going on at the time. And so we also had a comment about DE. And if you're not familiar with DE, that is diatomaceous earth. And so this is a powder. Dr. Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about DE?
This is like the iron phosphate that I mentioned, the diatomaceous earth. Imagine crushed glass and you're trying to walk over it. It will cut your foot and you don't want to do that. And so that's how the diatomaceous earth feels when a snail tries to crawl over it. So it's like a great barrier. So you have to be generous with it. It doesn't have to be deep, but definitely like maybe an inch width wide band. So with no breaks in it around the few plants that you have issues with. Or on the edge of the raised bed where the worm is going to come to and then climb up the wood. That probably be the best place to add that. It does work. It's a physical damage to the snails, but grasshoppers don't care because they just walk over it or jump over it or whatever. So but even worms, they hate to cross over it, not just snails or slugs.
Right. So you also want to make sure you're using food grade diatomaceous earth, especially if you're using this in the garden. So I know you can use diatomaceous earth in your pool filter. It's not the same thing. So make sure you're getting food grade. And
that's
also, it, like Dr. Joe said, it's a powder. It's a fine powder. It's very dusty. So you might not want to put it on a windy day because it might blow off or blow away from where you need it. And remember, we were talking about stormwater earlier, and like he was talking about, if you use too much fertilizer or your concentration's too hard, if any of those products wash off of your yard or off of your garden, they can end up in our creeks, lakes, and rivers where they don't belong and cause other problems.
Absolutely. So, very good point.
Yeah, and so I have used this for ants. Have you had any success using this for ants, Dr. Joe?
No, that's a good idea. I never tried it for ants. On the mound?
Yeah, so what I did is I have a pond, and I had an ant mound get into the border of because I had like dirt and rocks and stuff, for the border. And so fire ants love that loose soil, right? And so they got in there, and of course I was right next to my pond. So I didn't want to pour orange oil on it. I didn't want to use anything because of the fish and the plants I had in the pond. So I did sprinkle it all around the mound and a little bit on the outside. Cause they, like you said, they have their trails and different things like that, right? And so like you said, it cuts them and stuff like that. So the mound did disappear. Whether or not I have this big ant massacre outside, I'm not sure, but they're not there. And to me, that was a win because they're not there anymore. Absolutely. And I have also used it in a mound that was in my raised bed because I didn't want to take the risk of putting something in there that might affect my other plants and the soil microbes, and stuff like that. So I have had success with DE, and someone had mentioned a comment about that. So thank you for bringing that up.
I love it. I learned something today. I love that. When I learned something, that's a wonderful day.
Now I can tell you, it is a little expensive. So this little bag, I was surprised at how much of an investment this was. But I still have quite a bit of the bag left, so I still have many more applications. But like I said, I wouldn't recommend putting it on a windy day or right before it's going to rain or right before your sprinklers go off, because then you're just going to wash it away. And of course, after rain, you'll have to reapply it.
Yes.
So Dr. Joe also mentioned, so some of your recipes, Dr. Joe, called for lime, right? So we're not talking about like green limes. We're talking about this kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
And what is the benefit of lime?
All lime is lime. Commercially, it's not fast acting. They're pelletized, so it takes longer to break down. But this will be better for a garden, absolutely. instant result.
And what's the benefit of lime? What does it help us with?
Lime, it's mostly used to raise the pH. If you have issue with your garden, the soil pH is high. I would like to put a little bit of lime, even if the pH is fine, like 7 or 6.8, just to add that extra calcium or phosphorus that may be in it as like a fertilizer. With some fertilizer mixtures, like you saw the one with the handful of this and 5 handful of that, fertilizer by nature are acidic. So the lime will balance the acidity of that mixture so that when you add it, you're not adding acid to the soil that will kill the bacteria and the earthworms and etc. before it starts benefiting them. So it balances it, neutralizes the acidity of the fertilizer, so that when if I have to use like ammonium sulfate, then I sometimes add some lime with it, because my goal is not to reduce the pH. I want the sulfur, and the fertilizer. So that's one way.
And I'm glad you mentioned fertilizer, because you're coming back on October 19th and you're going to do a session with us about fertilization basics. So we have a link in the chat about that. So if you want to register for that, we'll get to hear some fertilization tips from Dr. Joe. And okay, we do have a couple of other questions. So does crop rotation in your beds help control pests and disease? And speaking of that, I have this cute little book. It's called Soil Matters, and it's about matchmaking in the garden. And what's fun about this is that it's written almost like a dating book. It's kind of like, like they do a play on matchmaking, and it's like, if you're this, who's your best match? And it's this companion planting book. So it's really cute, and it's an easy read. But anyways, what can you tell us about crop rotation?
Crop rotation, the idea on a commercial operation on large fields absolutely works. You have a serious problem, big insect, you move a field that's 5 miles away, you will never have a problem with that insect. But if you have 2 raised beds and then you move the tomato from one bed to the other that's 3-4 feet away, I always joke and say, is that going to confuse the insect? Like, where is the tomato? I can't find it. It's not going to confuse. Or the airborne disease like early blight. It's going to find it here or find it there. So crop rotation does work, but only on on soil insects and soil diseases. For example, you have nematode problem in this one spot, and if you put a tomato 3 feet away, that's a great rotation, because that soil nematode, it moves 1 inch per year. So if it wants to walk 3 feet, that's how many years? 2,000 years. So, soil-borne diseases like southern blight or things like that. You have a serious disease in this one spot, some serious issues like nematode. If you dig up a plant, on only 1 or 2 plants, for example, on one side of the bed, I suggest you dig up the soil, throw that away, and refill it with new soil is your best solution, best cure, and plant away from that spot, and that is the best rotation. So it's still considered rotation because you're not planting at the same spot, but don't think moving tomato from one bed to the other is gonna confuse the stink bug and say, I can't find it. It will fly and find it, still find it.
You have a really good point, because when I first started gardening in the house I'm in now, I was able to grow squash. Okay, but eventually, I don't know what it is. It's like the heat brings the squash bugs and the squash vine borer. And then, then I just had failure after failure. And then I just stopped growing it, because I was like, this is just, it's too much of a heartbreak. It's just too much work for no yield or anything like that. So let's talk a little bit about squash vine borers, because I think they're the bane of everyone's existence. So are there some squash varieties that are more resistant that we should think about planting instead?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. Like I said, if you plant squash, if you have room for the vining type, it's better, because as you put dirt and mound on the, where the stem and the leaf are, if you bury that, it will make roots. So if the source of the plant where you first planted it, that gets infected, the plant has roots and will continue to survive. That's fine. That's one option. One option I was told about, and it seems logical and probable, but I haven't tried it, is we know the plant lays an egg on the bottom side of the leaf. When that hatches, it crawls it make a beeline to the bottom of the plant, like where the soil is, and enters there. So one person told me they strip the 3 or 4 leaves and cut them with a razor blade so that stem is really nice and smooth, and wrap it like 6 inches with aluminum foil. So when that worm, it cannot enter, and it does not like to enter higher up in the stem. So it chooses, I mean, some do and some don't, but more than likely they don't enter. So it's a physical barrier to stop the worms from entering where they like to enter. I haven't tried it myself because I don't grow squash, but the logic of it is there and it's believable.
Yeah,
I just wish someone will try it and send me pictures and share with everybody else.
I know. So if anyone still on has done that, if you could put it in the chat if it was successful for you, because I've seen that too. Now, another product you mentioned a lot was BT. So this is an example, in case anyone hasn't seen, an example of BT. And Dr. Joe said it was really good for like worms and caterpillars. And this one, it's a liquid, and you dilute it and you spray it. Now, one thing about worms and caterpillars, on some of them, if they're, especially like hornworms, big ones, you can pluck them. So there's also the physical pest control where you can remove them. Also, chickens love hornworms. And if you have backyard chickens, you can like let them loose in your garden like once a day, and they'll go in and eat a lot of pests. So that's an option you have too. That's very organic. And then you get eggs, and then you can make your calcium mix out of your eggshells and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we were talking about, like myth or fact and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so I have seen, and I don't know if you know, that people have taken BT because the squash vine borer, when it's in the stem, is a worm, right? And they have injected, like with a needle, the BT into the stem where they think the insect is, or the worm is. I'm so sorry. They try to inject it. Where you talked about, there's that little hole that it digs in. So they'll take a needle into that hole and inject the BT in there to kill the worm. And it sounds like people have had success with that. Are you familiar?
It sounds logical and very probable, because when you squirt that BT solution in that hole where the worm is, it's going to coat the whole surface, and then the worm is going to eat, and eventually it's going to eat the surface on the inside that you just coated with BT, and it will kill it. So yeah, absolutely. I would tell you, I will believe it in a second.
All right, so that's definitely plausible. Okay, I love our Mythbusters theme we have going on here. Okay, so I just have a couple more questions for you, and of course, if anyone else has questions, please add them to the chat. So you mentioned a little bit about seaweed emulsion, and I do know for organic gardeners, they love seaweed emulsion. Okay, and also there's fish emulsion. Okay, so I got this product. It's a mixture of seaweed and fish emulsion. And I do see that they do have the numbers on the bottom. So Dr. Joe was talking about the PK.
NPK, yeah.
And thank you, NPK, and he's going to talk about more of this on the on our next session on the 19th. So is this something you think would be good? Because I am risking my dog being attracted to this. If I use this in my garden on my plants, I think my dog is going to be really interested in my plants. So I'm wondering, is it worth using this?
It is not gonna, if you open it, it'll, at least the fish emulsion that I have stinks to high heaven, like rotten fish. So if the dog is attracted to it and wants to lick it, it's rotten fish or like fish. So it's not poisonous. It's not gonna hurt anything. Just be careful, because if it does stink, you be careful apply it, because if you get it on your pants, I had to throw away socks one time because I washed them and they still smell that bad. Maybe I'm sensitive or whatever, but it stinks bad. Again, 2, 1, 3, or whatever the numbers are. NPK.
2, 3, 1. Yeah.
2, 3, 1. It works, but these are low numbers if you want to grow a tomato. So it does work, and we'll talk more about it next week, that if I want to grow a tomato, you probably need the equivalent of a whole bottle for one tomato plant. over the whole season. Then you'll say, okay, is it $20 for one tomato that I got 20 pounds? Is it cheaper to use something else?
Good point. Good
It's a
point.
lot cheaper. So
Yeah.
does it work? Yes. But so for some people, it is other factors you want to consider.
All right, so I just got two more things for you. And so you mentioned like magnesium and Epsom salt, right? Okay, so I have seen some stuff about like, magnesium deficiency. Like I guess our soils don't naturally have a lot of magnesium in this area. So it's not uncommon for our plants to suffer from magnesium deficiency. So I have this. Okay, so it says that it is actually pure Epsom salt. And on the back here, I'm trying to find my ingredients. It says magnesium sulfate USP Epsom salt. So can I put my foot soak on my vegetables?
You're putting a high grade and expensive kind, but will it work? Absolutely. I would guess buy the cheapest one. Say I'm practical, I'm cheap, I want to buy but absolutely will work. It's magnesium sulfate.
Okay, perfect.
Now, magnesium, I get magnesium deficiency sometimes, but it's only limited on one or two leaf, like early in the bottom of the plant of the tomato plant, I ignore it because it grew out of it. So it's only if you see it on the top leaves, that's when you should do something for next year. So we'll talk more about that. So if it's on the bottom of the bottom leaf tomato, one leaf, like one layer, and then they greened up, ignore it, plant grew out of it, just add some next year.
Okay.
But
so
magnesium sulfate is great for ornamentals, great for all the bushes in the spring, spread it everywhere. The plants will love you for it. The sulfur is necessary for plants, the magnesium is necessary. Just don't put a thick layer, like a fine dusting around the base of every bush or when you, while you're preparing your bed, vegetable garden.
You know, you have a point, because if I was to take my foot soak and put it all over my landscape, you're right, that would be quite an investment. So yes, but if I just have a few plants, I think I might stick with that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
All right, so the
and
last
for some
thing,
people, cost is not an issue because it's a passion, and like you said, they don't have a lot of plants. So what? Why not?
Sometimes convenience wins out, right? Because I have
Absolutely.
this here at home. Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So the last thing I wanted to share with everybody is, so Dr. Joe talked about the curling of okra. So I have this, I had picked some okra and they dried, but in case you've never seen it, here is an example, an extreme example of a little okra that curled so much. So it looks, I mean, it is like completely, looks like a little tortellini. That's how curled this little thing is. So I just wanted to share this with you in case you've never seen it. And so it does happen. Now, the rest of my okra, I had a couple that curled not this severely, you know, just kind of like a crooked finger. And then I've had plenty that are completely straight, but I've never had one this crooked before. So I am the proud owner of the most curled okra in North Texas, perhaps. So
you win.
I win. Yes, exactly. I win. All right. So thank you, Dr. Joe, for spending your time with us. We have a short poll. If everyone doesn't mind participating in it, it will help us with our programming for the rest of the year. And we hope you enjoyed it. And remember, if you ever need to reach out to me, you can send an email to greendallas@dallascityhall.com. And we look forward to seeing you on August 19th for Fertilization Basics. But 1 week from today, we have a really neat session with the Urban Intertribal Council. It's a group to help Native Americans. They actually have a community garden. And we're going to have 2 representatives from the Intertribal Council here to take us on a video tour of the garden, also talk about the health in gardening, and also talking about like a little bit of healthy eating with all the fruits and vegetables, like for diabetes control and different things like that. So one of the presenters is actually a nutritionist, one is a registered nurse. And so we're going to have a really good presentation 1 week from now. And thank you so much, Vanessa, for putting that in the chat. That is with the Intertribal Council. So we're really looking forward to meeting them and touring their garden. The weather has been fantastic these last few weeks and gardens are looking great. All right, so I think we have some really good results so far. So we have very likely that people are going to tune into another session. Did you learn something new about urban agriculture? We had 83%, Dr. Joe, who learned something new from you today. And we had We had 14% just come in a little bit under that. So they learned, but maybe not as much as some of those others. I can tell you, I learned a lot. And so I want to thank you for that. And how likely are you to take action based on what you learned today? 71% said very likely, and 29% said likely. So we're going to see what kind of interesting uses that everyone's going to have, and if they're going to do some myth busting on their own about all of these online recipes and stuff like that.
That's the plan.
All right. So again, for the Dallas Public Library and for Dr. Joe, thank you so much for spending your time with us on this Grow With Us. We hope to see you in future sessions, and we wish everyone a good day.